Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now, it's been a while since those last two videos about nursing life here in Australia, and I was wondering if you are actually interested in coming here. Now, I just want to share with you right now on my experiences on applying as a registered nurse here, as well as moving forward towards permanent residency. Now, let's start this off with a dream. Now, everyone actually dreams of having their place in the world, of working somewhere where it's comfortable, so greener pastures, and as well working to enjoy our lives and explore the world. Now, with regards to this, as a Filipino nurse, I actually had a lot of choices at hand because nurses are always required all over the world. So it's pretty much easy for us nurses to go about and go to a different country and do our craft there and possibly as well live as a permanent resident. So my top countries of working as a registered nurse and moving on to become a permanent residency back then was actually America, the UK. I also thought about working as well as a nurse in the Middle East because it's higher pay, and also here in Australia. Now, the reason why I chose Australia back then is honestly for me is because I've noticed that a lot of us Filipino nurses have been going to the States, have been targeting UK as well, and have been going to the Middle East. So at the time, my mindset was, well, there's a large pool of nurses already here in these parts. Why not try Australia? Because I haven't been hearing that much, to be quite honest, on people or Filipinos going to Australia. So I thought myself to maybe take this chance. So when I made the decision of going to Australia and becoming a registered nurse, I needed to know what the requirements are. So basically, I've done my research and I've found out that there is this program called the IRON program, or the initial registration for overseas nurses. Now, the IRON program is a 3-month course program for us registered nurses, just for us to get reacquainted with Australian culture and, most importantly, the standards of health in Australia. Now, that being said, the IRON program is not cheap. To be quite honest, at the time that I enrolled on this IRON program, it actually costed around $18,000 to $20,000 back at my time. So I'm not pretty sure right now on how much it actually costs, or if it's actually even an option today. You could just actually do your own research and just check if whether or not the IRON program still exists. Now, it's actually quite different with regards to applying here in the Philippines. Now, it's actually my first time on hearing an EOI, or an expression of interest, which at first the university was asking me about this and I was a bit confused on what they actually mean by it. It's actually just a simple letter expressing your interest to the course itself. Now, apart from that, there are some documents that they also required of me. First of all is educational documents such as my transcript of records, my certificate of good moral characters. Now, with regards to employment, they've also asked me about my employment certificates, on how long have I been working as an employee in the hospital, and also another set of good moral characters from the hospital or from my workplace itself. With regards to other set documents, it actually goes in conjunction when applying the visa. So such documents include your police clearance, driver's license, your passport, mostly for identification, and also an NBI clearance. And this also goes with regards to getting a visa, which is your medical records as well. If you have any past histories, past illnesses, if when was your last chest x-ray done? When was the last respiratory illness that you've had during the time they've been asking for us for a tuberculosis screening? And also an update on your vaccination records, whether or not you are pretty much up to date with all of your vaccines. And lastly, your medical clearance as well. Now, with that being said, I was granted with a visa. Now, what kind of visa was I granted during this 3 months course? Now, I was granted a business visitor visa, or a Visa 600. Now, this enabled me to actually take the program, but with a few restrictions. Now, one of which is I am not allowed to work anywhere, anytime. So the difference with other student visas is that you are granted at least 20 hours of work time. But with here, since the program is just 3 months, so if you're going to have to do this program, you're going to have to factor in extra expenses as well, meaning to say your expenses of living, buying food, and but all of the accommodations were already covered. Now the good thing about this though is I've been granted with a visa that lasts for a year, but I need to come back to my country for every 3 months. So that's just right after this bridging program that I've been doing. So after that, I went through the program, knowing the standards and knowing the culture here in Australia, which is actually very, very beautiful and very vast, and the history as well, which is very interesting. Going through the 3 months was actually just a breeze. So after the 3 months course, I immediately went back to my country and just waited for my registration to come through. Now, once my registration did came through, I immediately went back to Australia to process all of my papers. Now, this plan is in conjunction with becoming a permanent resident. Now, why would you say that? I haven't even started working. I don't even have an actual employee experience here in Australia. Well, that's the thing. Back then, once you get your registration as a registered nurse and you do have the experience anyways overseas, you can actually apply for a certification on the Australian and Nursing Midwifery Council, or Anmac. Now, why do you need this certificate? Well, back then, when we used to apply on our permanent residency, they asked for a legitimate certificate apart from your AFRA registration from the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Council. Knowing this, the ANMAC actually takes a while to make that certificate. For me, I think it's a good amount of 6 months. So when I got here, I immediately did that first, because one of the requirements on getting an ANMAC certificate is actually submitting your AFRA registration. So once I got that document first, I immediately made a copy and sent it to ANMAC for certification. So while I was waiting for the ANMAC to come through, within that 6 months, I've been going from company to company, from employer to employer, doing my plan B, which is actually looking for a sponsorship. Now, sponsorships back then aren't actually really easy to come by. During the course of looking for a sponsorship, I think it took me around 50 companies, just asking them if they also provide sponsorship. Unfortunately, out of those 50 companies, no one, and I mean no one, had any sponsorships at the time. So while I was looking for a sponsorship, my partner has been graciously been supporting me because she became a permanent resident before I did, and she was allowed to work, of course. And the good thing about is that what she's earning is actually good enough for the both of us. So the 6 months ran by and I finally got my ANMAC certificate. Now, what's next? So the visa that I was aiming for at the time was the independent skilled visa, which is actually the subclass 189 visa. So what does this entail? So basically, if your occupation or your profession is included in one of the subset skills that Australia actually needs, then you actually have a chance in securing that permanent residency. So back then, these includes your healthcare professionals such as doctors, nurses, pathologists, dentists. So that for me as a registered nurse, I actually fit the bill. Now, what are the factors that are very challenging for me applying for this 189 visa? So first off, the very most important for me was my age, because the problem is once you hit over 30, let's say around 31 and onwards, it would be quite difficult on applying for this because they go on a point system. As far as I can remember, if your age is around 21, I think, to 30, I think you get around 5 points. And after that, you also have to factor in a few things as well, like again, if your profession, if you're a registered nurse or whatnot, you get points with that as well. The second thing that was a bit challenging as well is the IELTS. You have to factor in your ability to speak in English. The passing band score was around 7.5. I don't know now. I think right now was I think around 8. I think around 8 because I remember this friend of mine from Nepal. She was trying to get an IELTS band score of 8. So yeah, that's quite high compared to back then. So I've gotten through the point system. I've gotten all of my scores done. All it takes is just applying for the visa itself. Again, I needed to submit an expression of interest for starters, and then other necessary documents such as my overseas passport, my driver's license for identification. Also some police checks, but this time here in Australia, as well as other documents such as my AFRA registration, my Anmac registration. So yeah, so expression of interest, so documents, AFRA, Anmac, driver's license, and IELTS score as well. And then for me, I had to wait, I think, a good 8 months. I think that was longer, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong. I'm just pulling these memories from my head. And yeah, I think it lasted me for around 8 months of waiting. During that time, I was still going with Plan B, still looking for sponsorships. But unfortunately, I couldn't find one, as I've said before. So on my last month with my business visitor visa, I had to go home and I had to wait it out there. After that, I finally got my certificate, my 189 visa. So finally, I was a permanent resident, and I was in a mixture of bliss, ecstatic, excitement, and as well as feeling a bit nervous because this is a new journey for me. This was a very different experience compared to back then that I've been going in and out of Australia every 3 months, looking for a job. This is it. This is my starting point. Yeah, so basically that's just about it. That was my journey of coming here to Australia and becoming a registered nurse, and as well as moving forward going to a permanent resident. And I find it very relieving that I finally made this jump, becoming from someone who's stayed in the Philippines, who's born and lived in the Philippines. I always have that anxiety of moving forward and making that first step. And I'm actually glad of doing this first step and finally living here in Australia, living with my wife, with my child, and now having a house being built. Anyways, guys, I hope this video actually has been helpful for you, or has motivated you, or even has given you a hint of information, maybe on with regards to how do other people do it? How did they manage to live in Australia? How did they became a permanent residency in Australia through the nursing pathway? And I hope this will actually help you in the future. Hopefully, when you find that you're a little bit in doubt and that you wanted to know more about other experiences, so you feel that you're not alone in this journey, just watch this video and learn from it, and as well as find a little bit of comfort and motivation, hopefully motivation for you to come here to become an RN, to work as a nurse, and as well as to become a permanent resident, live here permanently. Anyways, what do you think, guys? Leave your comments down in the description below. Otherwise, thank you very much for tuning in. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and also hit that bell icon for any more future notifications. Until then, guys, I'll see you all on the next vid.